All right. Welcome to another week with the Singles Connect Community podcast. We are so excited to have you guys here with us again. I know you guys missed us last week. We had so much going on. We had to take a break so that we could handle some other business, but we are back, guys. So don't forget, if you're still shacking up with us and you're still trying to figure out if you want to hang out with us permanently, hit the subscribe button, turn your notifications on, and definitely comment below this video. Let us know your thoughts, like it, share it with your community, and get in the conversation. Tell us your feedback and some topics that you would like us to consider to talk about on the podcast. I have my two beautiful co-hosts with me today. On my left, I have Mr. Akan and of course Miss Beautiful Stacy Ann.
Hi,
Welcome, guys.
everybody.
I've missed
Hey,
you.
how you doing? Good to see y'all today.
Yep.
All right, today is about a very, very interesting topic. It's not, I don't know if it's interesting, but it definitely is a very dynamic topic that goes very deep. A narcissistic traits. How do we identify narcissism in someone, especially when narcissists are known to dress up that because it's a mental health disorder. So let's just rest it there. Even though it's a mental health disorder that requires a lot to be diagnosed, but this disorder is so crazy because the people who often have it don't even know they're dealing with it. And they have a very good strategy of dressing it up, making it look nice, and all of that good stuff. So let's dive in. What are your thoughts on? First of all, has any of you ever had any experience with a narcissistic personality person?
I think I have, but I think at first it's kind of hard for you to identify it or to differentiate it too when you are in, connection with someone like that. Because as I say, they're very a narcissistic personality, or the people that tend to have narcissistic trait, they're oblivious to to their behavior, or that they fall in that category. But and oftentimes they're very clever, they're very smart, and they're very cunning. So they oftentimes have the ability to make you think that the issue lies with you and that you're the problem, or to turn it around where it seems as if you're crazy, or even accuse you of being toxic and nagging, and how is the what's some of the other words that you commonly hear? You want too much, or that doesn't even make sense, and we have already discussed this, and you're like, but no, we didn't, and you're like, but we may have, but you didn't provide any details, stuff like that. So they're great at doing those type of things, and also deflecting too in conversation. So sometimes it's kind of hard for you to tell what you're dealing with unless you are a person that is, and I'm going to use a famous word here, unless you're a person that is very self-aware, and you know yourself, and you know you're not crazy. But but when you're in those type of relationship, especially if it's a romantic one, and your judgments is clouded with other things, it's very hard for you to be able to identify, which is why I think it's a good topic for us to discuss. And also why, when you're having relationships too, isolation sometimes to me are not the best course of action, because other people may be able to identify certain things in individuals and see certain things that you're not able to see. So that's what I would say about my experience. Is it's you have to be very self-aware, and and after a while the light bulb starts to come on. But yeah, that self-awareness is going to be your key thing to start realizing, okay, certain things are just not adding up, it's not making sense. Oh, and listening to your gut. As women, we have that innate instinct. Listen to your gut. You know when something is off and when something is wrong. And trying to talk yourself into all the excuses, and making, trying to tell yourself this is not what it is. No, I see women sell themselves so many stories. They really believe what it is that they're selling, which is why they stick in some of these relationships.
You're absolutely right because when you're dealing with someone who's a narcissist, sometimes you actually go through the phase of thinking maybe you're the crazy one, maybe you're the one that's unreasonable because they do a
Yeah.
really good job at twisting your brain cells around and making you look like the crazy one. I can. What about you? Have you ever been in a relationship or at least experienced a narcissistic individual?
Oh, well, I would say, I mean, just from what you said first, I feel like most people the people who are the most narcissistic are the ones that are first to tell you, "Oh God, you're behaving like a narcissist. You're a narcissist."
Yes, you are
They're the
right.
first to tell you that. So I'm just like,
They
Oh
will
my
I
God,
think
gaslight
excuse me,
you.
guys, but
personally
that is
experienced it. I was
absolutely
like,
true. I've heard it from my
I was
own
like,
friends
It's funny how
that
you're
are
just so
dealing with people that are narcissists, accuse them of being
right. You're so
narcissistic.
quick to know that how do you how you feel like I'm starting to behave like but oh, so I think for me that's one of the most traits that I've seen with them, especially if you're someone who knows how to break things down. And for me, like when things come up, I'm breaking them down. Okay, what are the facts? What's here? If you say I did this, what's why did you know? And so when you did, I'll be like, oh no, like oh, I hope you're behaving narcissistic, whatever. But that's what I've seen with them, and especially when they don't want to. At least the one that I've experienced, they love conflict. You know, at least the person I experienced was like, oh, I just never have met someone who doesn't like. And she was referring to me like, you just don't like conflict. She likes conflict, and so and I was just like, okay. And then, is that what you're going to use to get away from the conversation that we need to have to sort this out? But I think, ultimately, I think a lot of people actually do have the narcissistic traits in them. I mean, like even like good human beings. I think some of us, I think from time to time, there's a tendency for you because some of the traits include selfishness, entitlement, grandiosity, like things like that are things that we sort of bring out as human beings. I think where this issue of narcissism is a problem or a challenge is when it's become a self imprinted pattern where the person is almost aware of what they're doing and is making sure that they repeat that pattern over and over in an extreme manner, you know, consciously, purposefully, seeing the results, seeing what's happening to the person who you're doing it with, seeing what's happening, seeing the consequences of this way you exposed it, whether you even if you haven't saying the truth, but how you said it and how the person is taking it, and you're still doing this thing. So that extreme case is where this becomes like a huge problem. And for me, I was having a conversation with someone, and the person was sort of like trying to talk about how society has an influence on people, whether it's women and men. And I was like, that's valid as a reason, but in the end, you still have to be able to like identify these patterns, be able to call them out, be able to know what you're going to do about them, and be able to protect yourself. And even also identify if you're actually partaking or participating in such a pattern as well. So, but I think when I think of narcissism or having narcissistic trait, I think of the extreme case of it, right? When you're doing it over and over, especially when you're someone who says you care about something, you care about someone in a relationship, you're constantly trying to manipulate them, you're constantly trying to feel like you're entitled, you're constantly trying to gaslight, trying to act like you don't know what's going on. When you know exactly what you need to do, it's like almost pushing a button. I should do, but you just constantly refuse to do that and do the opposite. So yeah, that's really my own idea of this.
I love what you said about the fact that these traits exist in all human beings.
Yeah.
Now, how we choose to engage or activate them to the degree of how it impacts our relationships, especially when it's negatively impacting our relationships, now that is when it becomes a problem. So when people, I mean, the narcissist word became very popular just a couple of years ago, less than 10 years ago, when the advent of mental health therapy, things like that becoming more prominent, psychological situations becoming more prominent, and people are now open to having discussions about it. Now, professionals were able to easily identify some of these mental health disorders because it is a mental health disorder. One thing that you said, Akan, the fact that this exists in everyone is just understanding the human dynamics. We're all human at our baseline, but now how we choose to balance out all of those traits. Of course, some people will say, in many instances, I've heard it said, oh, it's okay for you to be selfish and just really think about yourself sometimes. But when that selfishness now goes in between or it goes beyond what anybody else can kind of get ahead, where you can find a balance between when it's good to be selfish and when it's okay for you to sacrifice and compromise. And that is when there is a problem. So let's kind of identify some of those traits today when it comes to narcissistic traits, as far as affecting relationships negatively. For me, I would start with gaslighting. Oh my goodness, that is such a horrible thing that people do, gaslighting other people and just making them feel like they're crazy and they don't even see anything wrong in it. And just turning that person against themselves. It's kind of like you're turning that person inside out, and the person begins to doubt their own ability to make decisions, or their ability to even discern situations and things like that. Gaslighting, I don't know. I think that's very, very horrible. A lot of abusers use that as a technique to get their victims to sort of be more, I guess, to be more agreeable to whatever is going on and become
Yeah.
oblivious to it. So now, while they're doing that, now the victim begins to make excuses for the abuser. And
Yeah.
that's when you hear a lot of people say, oh, well, it wasn't his fault. I was the one that upset him, or it wasn't her fault. She's very hot tempered. And you guys know how she gets when she gets very angry. I just have to make sure I don't make her so angry. I'm like, okay. So, what are some other traits that you guys want us to talk about when it comes to the narcissistic traits? The extreme negative ones.
Um, One of them too is the lack of empathy. So, and then you have the one for the need of admiration, like this person. Oh no, Dr. OJ, don't give me that face. I'm serious. Where, you know how women sometimes, and I know that all of us have different things that feeds
Mhm.
us and that we need to thrive. Like some of us needs
Yes.
the words of affirmation, but you have those one that's, they want this constant admiration to the point where they put you down in order to make themselves feel bigger, and like everything they wear or if they walk out the room or something, you're supposed to acknowledge their presence. It's like, oh, you look great, you look good. And then if you don't do it, is it's like you're hating, or you don't notice me, or you're ignoring me and stuff like that. And then just that little situation turns into a bigger situation of an argument,
Mhm.
and now you guys are in this full-blown argument just because you failed to say, oh, you look great today, or you look wonderful, or so it's like. And then when I talk about the empathy and this other, I think another one of them is like you have this grandiose sense of self. No, 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 no. These things are real, and
Yes.
they show up, and you see them too, how they tend to kind of try to beat the other person's self-worth and self-esteem down, just so and it's, as I said, it's a sign of the manipulation, and it's a sign of that, where now you feel worthless, you feel less than, and nothing you feel like about yourself is worthy, or you feel like you're good enough, because not because this person have to beat you down so they can elevate themselves, and you
Mhm.
become the problem. And as Khan said, in human being, which I agree, all of us have a little bit of the tendency, but it's the extreme cases and the extreme traits where now you have to belittle another human being or take advantage of another human being and let another human being feel less than. And the abusiveness comes in for even in the verbal way in which you communicate with this person, and the emotional abuse too. And just so that you can remain, they, as I said, they use the word grandiose sense of self, but other
Mhm.
people are important, so can look at it as the dominant personality, or to make you feel like you're the stronger trait in the person in the relationship. But it's it's a lot, and it does come from a mental space. And Dr. OJ is very right, and I think I can't touch on that. They're often the persons who never knows that this is something that is wrong with them, and
Mhm.
it's you're in a relationship with these people and there's no concern for you. It's just all about them even when they're the one that's doing this the thing that is wrong, and you're trying to address the problem, and they're like, well, you don't know what was going on with me. I'm like, well, we're not talking about what was going on with you. I'm talking about the effects of the fact that this is the how you are showing up in this relationship, and you're
Mhm.
not going to say because something was going on with you. Okay, I understand that, but communication is key here. You're not the only person that is in this relationship. And why are we making the arguments about you? We're talking about your behavior overall. but
Overall,
you never get to the root of a meaningful conversation. I'm just trying to give you guys practical sense here, guys, as I'm
oh
talking,
yes,
as to
yes.
identify how to identify. You never can get to the root of a real conversation, so you can even earn an apology. And you rarely get an apology out of them too. Just so you
Oh
guys
yeah.
know, apology is far few and in between with those folks. It's sometimes non-existent, and it always revert back to what is going on with them, what is happening with them, and this is the reason for their behavior. When life happens to all of us, but if
Yeah.
you're in a relationship or you're having a relationship with people that you claim to care about, it shouldn't be so centered around just you and what is happening with you, as if you're the only person that God gives 24 hours a day when he does choose to give it to us, or the only person that has family dynamics to navigate,
Mm-hmm.
professional career dynamics to navigate, personal friendships to navigate. Life is happening to all of us.
That is so amazing. Thank you so much, Stacey. It's so funny because, when you see narcissistic personalities, when you want to address the big picture, they want to address the little things. And when you want to address the little things, they're telling you, well, it seems like we're doing good. Like it's like they just want to dribble around everything else other than
Yeah.
addressing the issue as it all comes out. Again, what are some examples of some traits that you have identified? And how can people really pinpoint those things with very simple examples that some people don't even know that they're with a narcissist? So how can we help them begin to identify? I've talked about gaslighting, we've talked about the grandiose behavior and things like that. What are some of the other things that we can also talk about?
I think the repetitive patterns are very important. It's important to observe when a pattern is repetitive. Repetitive in the relationship where you're with, repetitive in the relationship this person may have been with, repetitive in the way they treat people around them. It is going to stand out. And you need to be able to spot that and understand that, okay, this thing is not whatever's happening now, or the way this person is treating me is not a result of them maybe going through a mental breakdown or stress or whatever. This is who they are. This is what they do. And you need to do that. And speaking of, like a self admiration and an exacerbated self of worth, that really sometimes and most times actually comes from an insecurity, a place of insecurity, because they feel insecure about themselves. At least with what I've experienced, and they feel like the way they need to put you down is to make you feel smaller than they are because they feel insecure about themselves. And if you're not someone who's strong, you'll fall for that. The reason why you actually fall for that is because you do actually care for them. And so basically now you create that bias and you fall for that, and they're using that to do it, which now leads me to the issue of exploitative behavior, exploiting people's weak points, people's warm points, people's empathy, people's emotions. You're exploiting the fact that this person loves you, or you're exploiting that this person cares about you, and now you're going to exploit that in every way that you can. You do that, and then you mix it with different things of feeling special, gaslighting, making them feel like they're at fault, pushing them to extreme to do things that they usually wouldn't do. People will exploit people financially, will exploit people emotionally, even behavior wise, even when it gets to the bedroom, making them do things that they wouldn't usually do. It's just narcissistic behavior without understanding how it actually makes them feel, or wanting to know who these people are. So that is, it's like you have to be able to spot those patterns when, and I think I was having this conversation with some, like, intuition is a very is a very big thing in life. You have to be able to go by your intuition because your intuition will always let you know, it will always stand out to you that something is wrong. And when your intuition tells you something, you need to like listen to it. Because any decision you're making with intuition, it's not made out of fear, it's made out of what's inside. And so when you see that you're not being treated right, or someone is behaving in a certain way, you need to call that. And we also need to also understand that there's certain narcissistic traits that come up and people don't know that they're actually doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
It's real. It's real. You don't know that you're a narcissist, because the thing for me is I don't like leaving a closed door. I believe that people are open to learning. I believe people can learn and unlearn.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I'm saying is that I know that there are behaviors that I had to unlearn, and I've become, of course, that had to take a choice. So sometimes people are not aware. And that's why that self awareness is also very important. So like I said, this case of extreme, behaviors, which we now talk about narcissism, is like now you've tried, you've talked to them, you've pointed out the patterns, you've given them the facts, you've told them what's going on. They just don't want to even listen, or they don't even want to see a reason. They don't want to even see how they can work with a solution, or they don't even want to see what you're saying. Now that's a problem. So that's where you now need to say, okay, so this is no longer something where you're doing it unknowingly. I mean, my feelings are involved here, my worth, everything. And then that's when you need to decide the actions you need to take around the person, how you want to move. You want to walk on eggshells, you want to work in certain sectors, whatever is happening, or you want to not be in that, around that kind of energy. So my thing is, look for repetitive patterns, observe, understand what's going on, and then, apply the other things that, that I just talked about.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. It's so funny that you said it's some of us, some people, or some of us have those traits and we don't even know. I mean, there was a time and a season in my life when I didn't even realize how very what's it called, entitled I was. I didn't think it was entitlement. I just thought, you
Mm,
know, this is the situation. If you're my friend, this is what is expected. And those expectations I would thrust on people without having their agreement to the expectations. Like,
yeah,
you're expecting this of them, but they have not agreed to that level of expectation. And
yeah,
that entitlement mindset caused me over time to have so much conflict with different people that could have been avoided. But once I began to learn, I'm like, oh, wow, okay. I'm not even supposed to be entitled to these things. There is no sense of entitlement. It's more like if it's offered or given, there has to be gratitude. And
yeah.
gratitude is so I now switched my mindset to be like, oh, now it's like whatever little, whatever big thing you do, I'm always so grateful because
Mhm.
no longer am I entitled or have these unwavering expectations. And when I do set those expectations, which in many cases they are understated, like for example, if you say you're my friend, you're automatically signing up for certain levels of expectations within that relationship. And if I feel like you're not meeting up to that, then you automatically take yourself out of that space of me considering you my friend. So in that case, it's no harm, no foul. Everybody kind of holds the position that they, I guess, is like you walk the job description that you're qualified for. So if you're
Mhm.
qualified as a friend, we're gonna get in that relationship and work as friends. But if
Yeah.
you're not qualified and if you're not showing up with the right qualifications for a position, I no longer just hand it out to anybody to say, "Oh, this is my friend. This is my close person." This no 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 no. In this season right now, we are qualifying for jobs right here. Your job qualification is going to match your skill set. And if I'm showing up in your life, I expect you to verify my skill set. If I'm being a good friend to you, then keep me as a friend. If I'm not, then put me where I should be. And yeah, that's pretty much my own personal experience. So when dealing with a narcissist, and now we have a lot of people who are traumatized because it's from trauma. I realized that people who are narcissistic, they have also had to grow up or encounter trauma along the way that maybe for them they have not dealt with. So now, how does someone who is trauma reading and now becoming a narcissistic person based on the trauma that they've experienced, how do they begin to, or how can one navigate a relationship with such a person? Or should we just say avoid them like a plague? I mean, I know Aken said he likes to leave the door open, but Stacy, what are your thoughts?
Well, I like both of your guys' perspective. I have to say that I'm glad Akan brought up the whole thing about pattern because I it just refreshed my memory of a conversation that I had with someone, and I'm like, normally there is always patterns. I said these people don't just decided get up and they're this just to you. None of us are that special that they just particularly choose you to be. They're gonna victimize just you. I guarantee you, if you look across their lives and you look at other relationships they've had, or you've even listened to the context of if you ask the right question, like what happened in that relationship, why
Mm-hmm.
did you break up with that person, or what did you learn about yourself, you realize that um, you realize that there is a pattern of behavior in those relationship and in those situations. So I'm glad Akam brought up that whole thing about pattern. And the other thing that he addressed or brought to the forefront is that, yes, I am a strong believer, Dr. OJ, and an advocate, that anything can be unlearned, and you can learn new habits, you can learn new traits, because these are also steps that I had to take in my life, just like you, when you say you become more self-aware, and you have to take a look in the mirror, because sometimes when you take a look in the mirror you realize that you are the only, why do you keep going through friendships, why do you keep having
Mhm.
conflicts and issues with other individuals, whether it's people you work with, people that you're encountering on a day-to-day basis in your family, or you don't have any lasting long-term relationships, or if the relationship ends, it's sometimes you have to take a look and wonder, am I the problem here? You have to do some introspection. Sometimes you have to even maybe replay the different conversation scenarios that have happened in a relationship in your
Mhm.
mind, and then that's where the accountability comes in, and you
Yes.
making a conscious choice that, okay, I have to unlearn certain things. I don't want to repeat the same patterns. I don't want to keep going around the same mountain for 40 years like the children of Israel. They're just wandering, they're just
Mhm.
lost. So you have to kind of pep talk to yourself. So I'm glad that you both of you guys brought those things up. So as for me, I know I had to identify certain habits and behavior and decide that I don't want to do that, or I don't want to be this person. I learn different behaviors, learn different traits, and and that also comes with your emotional intelligence too. And a
Mhm.
lot of us are not willing to do the work. Dr. Dre, I think that's really the main thing. Is a lot of us, some of us like to be stagnant, and we don't like to be challenged. We don't really like growth. I've come to realize the human nature, a lot of us, we don't do well with change. We
Mhm.
like our safe, our little bubble that we create for ourselves. We like our world, especially if you're a person or individual of a certain age. Oh, that word is like a curse word. How dare you tell me I need to grow, or I need to change, or I need to have a different outlook, or a different perspective, or
Mhm.
different thought process, or just think about it in this way. Yeah, so that's my thought, is that it takes a wanting to be different and wanting to learn. And I think the last conversation you and I were having when we were talking about Akan wasn't there for that episode, when I was giving the practical example when we're talking about love languages, and to talk about you walking with God. If for people
Yes.
that are believers and you have to go through the period of stretching and changing, yeah, if you notice too, sometimes some of these problems that you find in these people are the ones that have the most difficulty to in their faith. Everything is everybody else's fault and everybody else's problem, and it's never me. I don't have time to look at myself and what's going on. And they're sometimes avid church goers. Just saying, I'm throwing that out there. Yep.
Yes, of
They sit in
course.
the pulpit, they serve in the sing in the choir, they serve in the church. But yes, yeah, it's
They
never them.
lead the
It's always,
congregation.
oh, and they blame everything on the devil because it's never them. It's the devil. Oh, it's the devil. The
They
devil
lead
made
the
me do this and made me
congregation,
say
sis.
that. Yes.
Yeah. They lead the congregation. Narcissistic personality is something that, like we said, becoming self aware is the starting point, knowing that you have this problem or this is something you have to work on. And one thing is, even though we're talking about narcissistic traits, let's look at it from a more simplistic level. We're just talking about personality traits that we all carry in some percentage, some type of degree, or yeah, some percentage or degree. But the thing is, how do we begin to grow beyond that person? Because everyone is growing every day. Not just your age should not be the only thing increasing every year. Your ability to be better, to think, to do everything should get better. And I know that sometimes you see this narcissistic personalities. It's not even just them not owning up to their faults. It's really sometimes there's those of them that flip it on you and now tell you, I'm so horrible. I'm such a bad person. And now you're suddenly feeling bad for them because you're like, no, you're not that bad. no, 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 you're not that horrible. You're actually, you know, and then it's like one minute you're blaming them for being the most horrible person, and the next minute they're really owning up to being that horrible person just so that they can mentally get you to shift into self-pity mode. And when
Yeah,
you
the
shift into this,
manipulation. That's where the
oh,
manipulation comes in.
that's terrible. That's
Yeah,
terrible.
yeah.
All right, I can. Sorry, I know you were having a bit of technical issues, but welcome back. So let's look at some of the.
You
Okay,
sound a little far again.
yeah, yes, 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 yes. So let's look at some of the things that can actually help people do better. What are some changes that can be made to help people come out of some of those narcissistic trends that they're in if they're really looking to get help?
Um, well,
Well, I
for
think
me,
one of the
okay,
first
yes, you can
clue,
go.
as we mentioned about, is becoming self-aware, where you start to actually take inventory of your own life and you start to ask yourself the hard questions, which says that it's sometimes the things that we don't want to face. And as they say, sometimes relationship is a mirror to ourselves. It shows us the things that we need to work on or the things that is not so great about us. When you having to share your space, your world, your time with your existence with someone else. So I think that self-awareness is the first clue, because that's what's going to drive you to the introspection, to start asking the hard question: is it me? What about, how did I contribute to the issues or the problem? What can I do differently about myself, or what can I change about myself? And then when you start asking those questions, then you can move on to the next step of now putting action to how you're going to change, whether that maybe take going through therapy, that takes reading, that takes open up your mind to different understanding of things. uh, whether it's talking to other friends that may have or maybe a higher IQ than you, or changing your circle, because sometimes the people that you're around too can influence your habits, your behavior, the way you think, the way you view life. So sometimes you have to change even your circle. So I think it starts with the self-awareness that leads to you doing self-introspection and taking inventory of your life and looking at your patterns of behavior, and started to make changes from there.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I can. What about you? What are your thoughts? What are some things that people can do to really help them, shift the needle forward? If they are seeing some of this, I mean, watching this podcast, hearing some of these traits that we've mentioned, of course, those are the top level ones, but there's still quite a few things which we all can learn from. What are some ways that we can move the needle forward and make certain changes to help us get better and, improve our interactions with others, especially when we know that we care about people, because some people are narcissistic, and I truly believe that they want to be better, but in many cases they just can't help themselves.
Well, it's like I said, it's usually up to when you see people behaving a certain time, after you notice the patterns that are there, and you need to point those patterns out, and you need to spot them and bring them to light.
Can you're still
So
very
you
far. You
sounded
sound
very
very
low.
far.
You sounded very
You
Oh,
faint.
sound
really?
very low. Mhm.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Let me see if I can fix that. Yeah. Trying to sort that out. Can you hear
Bear
me
with us,
better?
guys. They're having a little technical difficulties, but again, this is a live recording that we're doing here. So you're so whenever you guys watch the show, just understand that this is a technical moment that we're having, but the conversation and
What
everything
you can
still
do is
makes
you can
sense.
go. Actually, you can go and then I'll try and fix this. I might have to let off and then let that in.
All right, that's fine. Yeah, sorry guys for the technical issues we're facing today. Technology definitely has a mind of its own, but guess what? The show must go on. So today we're talking about narcissistic traits, and Stacy and I and Akan, we've kind of dived into so many areas, so many types of experiences that we've had, but also understanding that this is fundamentally a human problem, and anyone and everyone could easily be a perpetrator of narcissistic traits. It's just a matter of each of us understanding how to find a balance. It's balancing our mental health, balancing our self awareness, and investing heavily. And I say that carefully, investing heavily in personal development, because the only thing that should the only the thing that grows and increases with everyone automatically is age. Every other thing is by intention. If you're going to be mentally developed, you have to intentionally invest in it. If you're going to be a better person, you have to intentionally invest in becoming a better person. So yes, we subscribe to you just doing that self evaluation, self checks. And if people have given you certain feedbacks, don't take it negatively, take it to heart, and try to see better ways, or ways that you can kind of overcome that by finding the help that you need. For some people, they need to go the whole shebang. They need psychologists, they need therapists, they need family intervention, okay? But for some, it's just a matter of making some minor adjustments and becoming a bit more self-aware, investing in some emotional intelligence tools that helps you learn about yourself, learn about ways to make that self better, and just being able to get and embrace feedback from the people around us. All right, I can welcome back.
Yeah. Do I sound better now?
Much,
Yay!
much, much, much. Yay, yes.
Yeah. That knocked me off for a bit there. But I don't know where you'll stop. But here, so like I was saying, like, you just have to be able to observe these patterns. And I also wanted to talk about, because I feel like we've also really been beating on what people have done and how, on the narcissists and what they do. But I think it's important to have the conversation of how you actually get there, because some people
Mm,
actually don't know how to get to, and I know Stacey mentioned about trauma and everything, like, it might be, and I think it was that you or Stacey that said trauma and things that you may have gone to. Sometimes you don't know how you get to these places, like you just, it happens and you become, and sometimes people are also in different stages of their life that these types of things are more blown out, and then you sort of fall into that pattern. So, for example, maybe you're facing something very difficult, you're in a very difficult point in life, you're going through a hardship period, and so then now you're sensitive to everything, but you don't even know that you're bringing that energy into things like your relationship, But like I said, the one thing you cannot argue about is that those things are going to stand out. When you start doing these things constantly and consistently, it's going to show up. So whoever is dealing with you, or if you're the one dealing with such a person, it needs to be called out, it needs to be identified, and then, but the thing about it is someone who is progressive and someone who is willing to change things. And like I said, part of the reason why I'm saying this is because I know that there are behaviors that I had to unlearn, because I knew it was not going to take me to where, and this thing ties about everything that we've been talking about in the podcast. You sort of like identify, okay, this narcissistic behavior or these things I'm doing is not in alignment with my purpose. It's not in alignment with the kind of person I want to be. It's not in alignment with me being a good husband. It's not in alignment with me being a good wife. It's not in alignment with me being a good father. So I have to take this out. So it's going to require work. So I think people should not be scared to do work, because I think sometimes we make this like thing of being a narcissist or being a certain way, something of this is who you are, this is how. No, things can be learned. People become things. You learn what you want to be. You decide, and so God bless you have someone around you that is able to point those things out and let you understand like this is what it is, and that person. Now, in the case where this person doesn't want to like do it, doesn't care, doesn't need to know, is very insensitive to what is happening to the person who is experiencing the consequences of this your behavior, then that's a problem. So then, like I said, you have to decide that, okay, I have to either love you from afar, or just not be around, or depending on the level or how extreme this is, because people get affected in different ways. It affects some other people deeply, and frankly, your behavior can actually cause trauma to another person. So
mhm.
I just wanted to add that before we had that glitch. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Akan. So, as we begin to round up our episode today, what I want to say is I think one of the mistakes that we all make as humans is we tag people and ourselves, and we make those behavioral traits and patterns into who we are. So, for example, someone is, maybe you have a friend or a sister or significant other who might have anger issues, right? And we automatically tag them by saying, oh, you're such an angry person. And I have found that using those words,
Mm.
which we have found the which I have found, kind of sort of reinforces that behavior in the person, can be more detrimental than helpful. So maybe one of the things that we can begin to do, even I know a lady who says, "Oh, my husband told me I'm narcissistic," and she every time she wants to start a conversation, she's like, "Oh, I'm dealing with my narcissist." Like she's now calling herself based on that. Maybe she's dealt with it for many years, but now she sees herself in her personality as who she is. But that's not who she is, because she is still an amazing human who has certain traits that can be worked on and overcome, and they become better, and there's a transformation that will happen. So if we kind of switch our conversations from identifying, calling people the problem that they're dealing with, right? Say, "Oh, you're a narcissist." Okay, well, if we identify narcissistic traits in our friends, in our partners, in the people we're in relationship with, we might just want to bring it up to them and say, "Hey, you exhibit certain traits that are narcissistic," as in, because those traits don't make up their identity. But the moment we make it their identity, it becomes even more difficult for
Mm-hmm.
that person to
Mm-hmm.
act contrary to who we believe they are.
Mm-hmm.
So now the change becomes more of an uphill battle.
Yeah.
So that's just one of the things that I think maybe our community could benefit from. So even if you're the one struggling with it, "Oh yes, I am. These are some of the things that I do, but what I do is not who I am." So that means I can change what I do to doing something else, but maintain the uniqueness of who I am, which is a child of God in my case, and just having that I am mentality, and understanding that what we say reinforces what we experience.
I'm glad you brought that up, Dr. OJ, because I think though that's one there's like 10 traits, guys, and you can look them up. And when we post the or description of what we're talking about here, I'll include that. But Dr. OJ just touched on one of the traits, and it's actually the whole lack of boundary. And the lack of boundary, how the way how they describe it or explain it is pretty much when that person takes over, they don't respect their partner's space. And the way the things they say to you kind of take over your mind and thought. And that's exactly what has happened to this lady. So now she has adopt this persona of, "Oh, I'm a narcissist," because whoever it is beat that into her
No,
instead
she
of her
actually
making a conscious
she has
choice to
very
say,
strong.
these
Stacy,
are
she
things about
actually has
myself.
very strong narcissistic traits. She does. She does.
Yeah, well, I'm saying, but you now you adopt the persona instead of saying that, what can I do to change this? This is not something, this is not who I want to be. This is not how I want to show up to the world. This is not the type of thing that I want people to know about me. Or whenever I introduce myself, I am forewarning people, "Oh, beware, this is who I am." Like, who wants to, it's like you walking around with this, the word scarlet letter on your forehead. Like, who wants to do that? So I'm just saying that, instead of that per husband or whoever it is to say, "Babe, these are things we can work on, these are things we can change. I don't want to see you become this person. You're such a beautiful soul. There's so much good in you. Let's work on those things." You of now, I guess, as I said, in probably beating this into this person's head, though this person have developed this persona. And then that's what I wanted to say about that. And then also another trait is also envy and jealousy too. So, and those things you can probably pick up depending, as I said, the dynamic that you're dealing with. You may be able to identify those things, traits more in the friendship, and even in the romantic, whether it's marriage or unmarriage, fiance, whatever it is. You do have some of those dynamics too of the envy and the jealousy, which is where you find that the other person constantly, Akan touched on it earlier, guys, when he talked about it comes from insecurity, where you constantly beat the other person down and downplay the other person, put the other person down so that you can feel better about yourself, because it's actually what you're doing is projecting your own insecurities onto someone else.
Yeah. I just wanted to say, like, I'm gonna go with what Dr. OJ said about, how you talk to people, and what you how you tell them, and not just tell them that, like, the way you say it to them is important, or like tell them that this is not a part of them. And what she said, I agree with them for the reasons she said them. And I think, Stacey, you also sort of touched on the same thing somehow as well, including other issues. But I want to further give another reason why we should actually move that way. Why, if you come in contact or you find yourself around someone who is being narcissistic, because I don't also like to really label them as narcissists. I'll just say
Mm-hmm.
someone who's exhibiting high narcissistic behaviors,
Mm-hmm.
um, is because energy is real.
Yes.
Everything is about energy. And so when they exhibit that kind of trait towards you, and you go back at them in the way that Dr. OJ said we shouldn't go back at them, where you're now like being very, saying that that's who they are and all of these things, that starts to increase the level of their narcissism, because now they feel bad, they're frustrated. You become frustrated and possibly start also exhibiting those traits because you're trying to protect yourself. And there's also points where, as a human being, in your own behavior as well, you're also trying to be reactive. You're also trying to feel like it's some sort of like revenge, or like you don't want to feel like you're put down. So it's important to. I think this one is very important because I also used to. There was a point in my life where I had a little bit of this issue, where it's like you can tell people the truth, but how you say the truth matters.
Mm-hmm.
How you say it matters, because if you don't say the truth, or it becomes just your truth, because nobody wants to listen to you, because the way you're saying it out in a way that feel makes them feel victimized. You're saying it in a way where it feels like you're fighting them. But if you say it in a way where they're able to listen, say it in a calm environment, find an environment that is conducive. Take your time. If it's not the right time, if you feel like they have things going on in their mind at the same point in time, and you wait till the perfect time, sit to them and let them receive it, and also see how they receive it. And so I think that's very important when it comes to like a husband and a wife or in a relationship. How you see people receive stuff is very important. Very, I wasn't conscious of that before, but now I am. No matter what I have to tell you, I need to still see how you receive it. Just to know if you're in the right time. So I just wanted to add that to the
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah, saying things in kindness and in love is important. It's like
Yeah.
what the scripture said, a soft answer turneth away wrath.
Yes.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much for an amazing episode today. It's been really, really good talking about this. I know that we touched on a lot of things that maybe some people might find a bit triggering, and we do apologize. Our goal is not to trigger anyone, but to really bring light to situations that inhibit us from forming healthy, positive relationships. So, hopefully, you find some good in today's episode and some nuggets that can help you move the needle forward in your lives. But most importantly, we advocate for self improvement, self development, and just really doing whatever it takes to become a better version of yourself every single day. All right, y'all. For me, that's all I have for this topic of narcissistic traits. I am still working on my own self to becoming better and better and diminishing the negative aspects of these things that we all carry. Stacy said something, envy and jealousy. Sometimes say, oh, I envy you, or this and that. We might say that jokingly, but then when that envy actually goes beyond you just really maybe seeing something good in someone that you want for yourself, then that becomes very negative to the relationship and it
Mhm.
becomes toxic. And that's where you see friends really betraying and doing things underhandedly towards other people, or just saying things, but and just anyway, y'all get what I'm saying. I'm working on myself, and we should all be working on ourselves. And until next time, guys, do you guys have any closing words for our community as we round up the podcast today?
The only thing I would say is that, guys, don't ignore the signs. Your intuition is probably going to be one of the best tools you can rely on, as if you're a person that is very self-aware. But for most of us that are not that self-aware, that intuition is going to be key. So don't ignore that intuition, guys. When it's telling you something is wrong, take a minute to step back and actually, do some deep thought and search on what your intuition is telling you.
Awesome. I think it's been a great conversation. You ladies have said it all. I don't have much to say anymore. Just take what we said, work with it. If it applies to you, please use it. And like Dr. OJ said, if we found anything offensive, we apologize. But yeah, this is how we chop it up every time. And it's been a great session so far.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much. Don't forget before you leave today, comment on this episode. Let us know what your thoughts are. Let us know some of your experiences that you've had with this narcissistic traits from people that you are in relationship or community with. And of course, share this episode. But don't forget, most importantly, to subscribe and turn your notifications on as we will bring you another amazing conversation from the Singles Connect Community Podcast next week, same time. Have a wonderful rest of your week, guys. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. And share.
And share.